All right, today we're going to dive into a really fascinating miniseries from 2019 called Peter Cannon Thunderbolt. It's written by Kieran Gillen with art by Caspar Weingard, and honestly, it's one of the sharpest, most intelligent responses to a comic book legend that I have ever read. So let's just get right into it, and we'll start with the big question. You know the question. It's probably one of the most iconic lines in all of comics. For decades, it's been this deep, rhetorical question about power, about accountability. Who's really in charge here? And for a long, long time, nobody really had an answer. That is, until this comic came along. And that's the incredibly bold premise of this series. It looks you right in the eye and says, we're the answer. It's a comic that doesn't just admire one of the all-time greats from a distance, it decides to step into the ring and talk back. To really get what makes Peter Cannon Thunderbolt so special, you have to understand that it's in a direct conversation with Alan Moore's Watchmen. This isn't just another superhero book. It's a commentary, it's a critique, and it's a full-blown dialogue rolled into one. Yeah, it's doing so many things at once, it's incredible. On one level, it kind of feels like an unofficial sequel picking up on the themes of Watchmen. But then, it's also a really clever parody poking fun at that grim and gritty tone. At the same time, it's a huge homage. You can feel the respect for the original. And then it goes a level deeper, becoming a deconstruction of Watchmen's own deconstruction of superheroes. It's complex, for sure, but that's what makes it so brilliant. Okay, so let's dig into how it actually does all this. The best place to start is right at the core of the story, with a central conflict that is, and I mean this, an almost shocking mirror image of the climax of Watchmen. So the story kicks off, and wham, a massive alien attack is devastating the world. Now, if that sounds familiar, it should. It's a direct echo of the giant alien squid that Adrian Veidt Ozymandias dropped on New York City. This isn't just a small nod. It's the entire comic's thesis statement right there on page 1. But here is the genius twist. The person behind the attack is an evil, alternate universe version of Peter Cannon himself. So our hero, instead of being the Ozymandias archetype, is forced to fight it head-on. The story is literally putting the whole smartest man in the room trope on trial. And just in case the connection wasn't clear enough, the visuals really drive it home. The evil Cannon operates out of this Arctic fortress, this ice palace filled with video screens. I mean, come on, that's a direct visual shout-out to Ozymandias' base, Karnak. The parallel is just undeniable. Let's keep going, because the series doesn't stop with just one parallel. Oh no. To fight this Ozymandias-style threat, Peter Cannon has to assemble a team, and every single member is a very clear stand-in for a character from Watchmen. And the book is filled with these clever, sometimes darkly hilarious little winks. There's this one scene where the character named The Test, who's the Rorschach of this world, he stuffs his mouth full of raspberries and just spits them out on a table, creating this perfect little splash of red on yellow that looks exactly like the famous bloody smiley face button. It's a reference and a parody all at once. And this one-to-one mapping is totally intentional. You've got Nucleon as the all-powerful Dr. Manhattan, Supreme Justice as the government stooge comedian, and so on down the line. By recreating the entire team, the series gets to play with all of those archetypes that Watchmen made famous and ask, what do they even mean today? But to really get the joke here, we have to go back even further in time. See, these character archetypes didn't actually begin with Watchmen. This is where we get into this amazing kind of Russian doll situation in comic book history. That's right, it's a fun piece of trivia. When Alan Moore first came up with the idea for Watchmen, his plan was to use a bunch of characters DC Comics had just bought from an old company called Charlton Comics. But DC got cold feet. They were worried his dark story would make those characters totally unusable in the future. So what you get is this incredible 3-layer history. Ozymandias was inspired by the original Charlton hero, who was Peter Cannon. Rorschach was inspired by The Question. Night Owl was inspired by Blue Beetle. And now, this new Thunderbolt series creates a third generation of these exact same archetypes. It's like a hall of mirrors, reflecting all of comic book history. So all of this deep, creative history is what lets the series explore its biggest, most ambitious idea of all, a commentary on the literal structure, the nuts and bolts, of how comic books are even made. To get this, we just need one key idea: formalism. Now that sounds academic, but all it means in this case is the visual structure of the page, how the panels are laid out. And the most famous formalist trick in Watchmen was its constant, relentless use of the 9-panel grid. So why was that layout so important? Why did that simple 3x3 grid become so connected with Watchmen and this idea of a serious comic book? Well, the 9-panel grid is just incredibly effective. It creates this steady, rhythmic pace, like a drumbeat pushing the story forward. You can almost think of every single page as its own little 3-act story. The top row is the beginning, the middle is the development, and the bottom is the conclusion. Watchmen basically turned this simple layout into an art form. Okay, now here's where Peter Cannon Thunderbolt gets truly mind-bending. It takes this abstract idea about storytelling and makes it a literal superpower inside the story. The characters start to realize they're in a comic book, and they can actually use the panel grids to their advantage.
I mean, seriously, there's a fight scene where the evil Thunderbolt physically grabs the border of a comic panel and uses it like a shield. He even slips between the panels to sneak up on his opponent. Formalism isn't just a style choice here, it's a weapon. It's a tool.
And all of this meta-commentary builds to the comic's central thesis, a simple message delivered by our hero, Peter Cannon. After more than 30 years of other creators trying to copy Watchmen's grim tone and rigid structure, this series just looks at all of that and says, we can do better. Ultimately, Peter Cannon Thunderbolt is arguing that while Watchmen was absolutely a masterpiece, its influence has also been a little bit of a cage. By taking apart its characters, its plot, and its very structure, this comic makes this powerful case for moving on, for not just imitating the past, but for finding brand new ways to tell stories. And that's the final thought it leaves us with. This comic isn't just answering who watches The Watchmen. It's asking a much bigger question. What comes after The Watchmen? If we can escape the grid, if we can break out of old habits, what amazing new stories are out there waiting to be told? And that's a question for the entire medium.